Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited for the next senior presentation. Hazel has been at VNS since she was a 7th grader. I've only known her for 3 years, but all of her projects have purpose. There's a meaning, and most of it is like for her to become better, for her to grow, for her to like make the world better, save something, like everything. And then her senior project, everything came down to that. I want to implement these actions. I'm doing all this research on sustainability, but I want to become more sustainable. And she did that throughout. It was fun to see her big ideas. And at first we're like, I don't know if you'll be able to do all these. And she did. Like, she applied her knowledge throughout the project. And I hope you see that and realize that that's really unique and also really rewarding. So without further ado, Hazel with Thrift and Simplicity.
Thank you for waiting, by the way. Okay. The harsh reality is that our Earth is dying, and humans are the reason why. Whether you've heard this before, it is the truth, and unfortunately, we may be the last generation left to save it. When I first heard this, I felt ashamed, afraid, and angry all at once. It was disheartening to realize that much of my life would be spent witnessing the world die or constantly fighting to protect it. Yet, I felt a deep responsibility to do everything I could to reduce my negative impact on the planet I have such an immense appreciation for. Recognizing how many of my interests already were tied to this responsibility, my new purpose became learning about and adopting as many sustainable practices as possible to support Earth's longevity. The main question I wanted answered was why? Why is our planet suffering? Why have we let it become this severe? And what can I do to prevent it? Right now, our economy functions in a 5-step system. First, extraction, the process of retrieving raw materials. Production, the process of transforming materials into goods. Distribution, making products available for purchase by transporting them from manufacturers to customers with efficient timing. Consumption, the act of purchasing products. And finally, disposal, the end of a product's life, involving the removal, destruction, or recycling of goods that are no longer usable, needed, or safe. This system is a system in crisis. Does anyone think they can tell me why? Cameron.
Over-extraction, over-production, over-distribution, and over-consumption. And we don't dispose of it right.
That's a great way of putting it. So the answer is that our system is linear. And you cannot run a linear system on a finite planet indefinitely. Nothing from the last phase can or is being reintegrated into the system. Items are simply manufactured for need or pleasure, used until they are unusable, and thrown away. Therefore, we are meeting several dangerous limits as the system continues to interact with societies, cultures, economies, and the environment. The linear system is rooted in consumption, or more accurately, overconsumption. Overconsumption refers to the excessive use of resources, goods, and services, leading to detrimental environmental, social, and psychological effects. In the last century, human consumption worldwide has risen by 900%, and in the last decade alone, it has risen by roughly 22%. At the current rate, it is estimated that we will need 2 more planets by 2050 to provide necessary resources and absorb our waste. Unfortunately, the United States of America is the problem. We are the largest consumer country in the world. Although Americans make up 4% of the world's population, we consume nearly 25% of global resources. Since the first industrial revolution, we have built our society around stuff. The first industrial revolution occurred in the late 1700s to early 1800s with the rise of the steam engine and railroads. Growth continued over the next few decades, and citizens were happy to participate in this progress. The second industrial revolution began in the early 1900s with the rise of assembly line manufacturing and the automobile. We began to harness the power of fossil fuels and electricity to produce steel and chemicals. Manufacturers saw the opportunity to produce at new rates. They also saw the potential for profits to soar. Efficiency became the primary focus. Corporations began disregarding ethics instead became driven by greed. Owners began to realize that products made with high quality that maintained a company's reputation did not create return customers. In 1924, for instance, Alfred P. Sloan, CEO of General Automotive, was the first to explore dynamic obsolescence, or the deliberate shortening of items' lifespans or attractiveness. Today, we call this planned obsolescence. This created a reason for customers to purchase functional replacements. He began releasing new models every year, featuring slightly stylistic or functional tweaks to compete with Ford's popular Model T. Owning the latest model became a sign of status. Henry Ford was the first to put this idea down and continue to promote durability and ethics. As companies adopted Sloan's dynamic obsolescence model, they saw the need to keep the public aware of their product updates. Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, took this idea of marketing to a new level. He applied Freud's research in mass psychology to design persuasion campaigns for American clients like Procter & Gamble and CBS. Bernays is best known, however, for his American Tobacco Company campaign, where he had medical professionals recommending cigarettes as replacements for sweets and to pregnant women, or calling them torches of freedom, framing something considered unladylike as the ultimate feminist rebellion during the women's rights movement. Americans' ability to purchase new items, though, remained stagnant during the next 20 years. The Great Depression of the 1930s brought high unemployment. World War II required citizens to live frugally in order to support war efforts. In 1943, food, textiles, and metal were scarce. Citizens were encouraged to ration food and create gardens, repair rather than purchase new, and invest any spare income into the war efforts, which reached a whopping $185 billion by war's end. In 1945, when the war ended, products became accessible again. Consumer optimism increased, and spending trends began to change. Women who had worked in factories and other businesses during the war were back at home. While 80% of women wanted to keep working, society gave the jobs back to the soldiers who were returning home. This created a largely confined consumer population of females, and companies took advantage. Marketing tactics in the 1950s cultivated the idea that serving meat at every meal was symbolic of someone cooking in a home kitchen. Off-the-rack fashion became more widely available, replacing homemade and made-to-measure garments. By 1951, 90% of garments sold in the U.S. Were ready-made. For comparison, only 2/3 of garments in France at that time were ready-made. Americans had bought into the mindset and practices of consumption. By 1971, we didn't even question marketing slogans like L'Oreal's "Because You're Worth It" or Gillette's "The Best a Man Can Get." Consumers now conflated our worth with the contents of our homes instead of the contents of our characters. Since 1945, industrial productivity has risen 96% in every area, including goods, agriculture, services, and fuel. This is partly due to the human population growth. In the 1970s, we reached 3.7 billion people, and we have recently reached 8 billion. That jump only took us 50 years. The only factors are marketing and consumer mindset. As the population grew, consumer demand grew exponentially. More people buy more, but we also just think we need more. Americans live in homes 3 times larger than homes in the 1950s. In 1946, there are fewer than 17,000 TV sets in the US. By 1960, 3/4 of families owned at least one TV and watched it 4 to 5 hours daily. TV ownership had a meteoric expansion, and in turn, so did commercials. Today, nearly $515 billion is spent annually on marketing in the US, much of which is devoted to research on consumer insights and data, rather than the actual creation of advertisements. Advertisements are designed to make us feel like we never have enough. Moreover, they have normalized consumption to an extent that we don't even know how much is enough because the level of enough doesn't exist. Marketing is now constant, and endless suggestion leads to less self-control. It has turned us into creatures that shop our fears and insecurities. The consumer culture created by this level of marketing requires we use material items as benchmarks of our identity, sense of belonging, and social status. Thus, companies are extremely interested in our aspirations, insecurities, and the conditions that heighten those. It's no coincidence that malls have bright lights illuminating merchandise and very few windows to keep customers drawn towards the items or lose track of time. They cause us to purchase on impulse for comfort. More than half of luxury items are purchased by low to middle income brackets to elevate feelings of status. Marketing breeds self-consciousness about skin, weight, and style, so we buy products geared towards fixing these issues. Instead of investing in ourselves by learning a new skill, taking on a new hobby, building relationships, investments that might actually raise our socioeconomic status, we're mindlessly buying products instead. Our never-ending purchasing means many of us are in debt. In some cases, we prioritize new items over paying bills. One survey showed that 28% of Americans prioritize purchasing the latest devices over paying bills, demonstrating that Sloan's dynamic obsolescence is now infused into our culture. As companies continue to purposely adjust product designs, customers are forced to purchase stuff for their stuff. Think about the latest iPhone model and all its new adapters and stuff. Also, many companies purposely produce goods with short lifetimes. If items break easily or wear out quickly, we just have to buy new ones. Put another way, we are mindlessly buying and buying in. A 1930s study showed it took 7 looks at a movie poster before someone went to go see it. Nowadays, it still might take 7 exposures before we decide to make a purchase. However, the exposures happen at far greater numbers and at a much faster rate. You know those constant pesky social media ads interrupting your games or music, you know? Our technology advances have given us the ability to see more options for a particular product than we ever had. It changes the way we date, too. Unfortunately, the more options we have, the less satisfied we are with our decisions. Too many choices leads to cognitive effort. This leads to decision fatigue. Psychologist Barry Schwartz defined decision fatigue as the draining of our limited stamina for good decision making. This often leads to increased regret over the choice we finally make. When we have fewer options, it's easier to see the pros and cons of each of them, in turn making it easier to determine the best choice. More options results in the opposite, and may even lead someone to give up making a purchase altogether. While there is no perfect sweet spot for decision making, it is somewhere between too many and none. Americans value freedom and autonomy, and in our minds we connect those concepts with unlimited decisions. Without a limit to the number of options, though, we will inevitably become overwhelmed with abundance. I made that, by the way. Social media in particular uses this psychology against us. Not only does it provide yet another outlet to see products, it flaunts consumerism via influencers. Companies have noticed that sponsoring popular influencers is a lucrative way to target the younger, more susceptible crowd of buyers. It is estimated that for every $1 a company invests into having an influencer advertise their product, they enjoy a $6 return. For a viewer, user-generated content, or UCG, often seems a lot more appealing and genuine than commercially created content. These same viewers, however, are drawn into purchasing commercial products when their favorite creator touts its benefits. The more we see our favorite influencers promoting a product, the more we associate their level of status with the product, making it more intriguing to purchase for the life we aspire to have. For example, we may be swayed to believe a product's scent or look will make us seem wealthier simply because the influencer confidently suggested it or it seemed trustworthy, when in reality, they might not even use the product themselves. Influencers are being paid to post. Social media has become so advanced and widespread that it has blossomed into a full-on career. In fact, being an influencer is the top career response of Gen Alpha when asked what they want to be when they grow up. They are paid to sell products, and they do their job well. The marketers who pay them will use anything from time of day to scarcity, discounts, or FOMO in hopes that they will encourage us to shop our fears and insecurities. Unfortunately, it works. After being exposed to skinny women on TV all the time, 50% of girls, including 6-year-olds, worry they are too fat. They are being set up to feel insignificant and worthless. So as they grow up, they're sucked into the consumer culture. Marketers will use any tactic that works, and who they target or exclude is intentional. Certain communities are targeted or excluded based on race, income, and socioeconomic status. Even zip code can dictate which ads someone receives. Prominently white areas receive advertisements for healthier food, quality health care, secure investment opportunities, etc. Meanwhile, sham products, scams, high-interest credit cards, payday loans, and junk food are predominantly advertised to communities of color. Advertisements for unhealthy products feature more actors of color partaking in the products, reinforcing systemic food depression and racism by disproportionately targeting Black and Hispanic communities. Additionally, many commercials are inherently sexist. Because men are making advertisement decisions approximately 78% of the time, men end up speaking in commercials 7 times more than women do, despite the fact that 69% of women report making the majority of consumer decisions in their household. Put another way, women in the United States control 85% of all consumer spending, to the tune of 11 trillion and 400 hours each year, which is the equivalent to like 8.5 years of your lifetime. While the psychology of consumption is often concealed within the various marketing strategies to which we are exposed, it is clearly evident in our spending practices and sales processes. The world population spends 1.2 trillion annually on non-essentials, with the average American adult spending $18,000 annually on these items. The average American home contains roughly 300,000 items, essential and non-essential. Our culture has basically become commercialized. We now treat shopping as a leisure or social activity. Our holidays focus on buying things. The industry pockets $960 billion in November and December alone. Each holiday season, over half of Americans go in debt, spending nearly $900 billion on presents, 53% of which are unwanted and become waste. Halloween spending is still less than Christmas, but still reaches $4.1 billion annually from costume purchases. Unfortunately, 53 million of them end up in landfills after 1 use. The mindsets of consumption are devastating our finances as well as our mental health. We are stuck in the never-ending cycle of consuming unnecessary material items to fix our problems, which leads to debt. Then we must work more to pay off our debt, but as soon as we get back on our feet, we are bombarded with advertisements that remind us we are not good enough and we need more items to fix ourselves. Over half of Americans believe that stuff is the root cause of their stress, yet when we feel out of control, we gravitate towards buying things to help us regain agency and problem solve. This is referred to as retail therapy. The act of merely browsing in a store or online releases dopamine, the reward chemical. This reaction neurologically trains our brains to conflate the feeling of pleasure with desire as we shop. This also applies to the anticipation of waiting for an online order to arrive. Rushes of dopamine are released, which cause the decision-making connection between the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia in our brains to lose inhibition and even tend towards addiction. Connecting with our stuff rather than people leads to immense loneliness or estrangement. According to the 2023 U.S. Surgeon General report, loneliness has become an epidemic and is a greater health risk than smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Living long, happy lives won't matter, though, if we don't have a planet to live on. We're definitely harming ourselves, but our linear system, paired with a materialistic mindset, is causing the greatest harm to our environment. As we move through this system, our individual practices have no regard for the planet's longevity, even though it is vital for human survival. Corporate and governmental policies also have great influences. They have the ability to oversee and exert control over the system, but all too often they create and maintain regulations that deliberately focus on upholding profit-centered, unsustainable growth. Furthermore, environmental policies change with administration and are susceptible to the whims of whoever has power. Our current administration has not supported land preservation or worked to combat climate change, perhaps two of the biggest problems we face. Instead, the White House is currently fighting for public land to use for development, with the intention of making money. Much of the damage to our environment, however, occurs during the extraction of resources. When we take resources from the land and water, habitat loss is great. On a large scale, with the construction of bigger buildings, and the loss is amplified. AI data centers, for example, damage ecosystems, pollute water, and absorb immense amounts of electricity. Centers also contaminate the air with PFAS, which is a forever chemical. As the technology progresses, we may not even need data centers in the near future, but the land will be scarred. Deforestation leaves scars too. Large fast food companies like Starbucks and McDonald's exploit habitats in West Africa by planting large numbers of cacao trees to meet their customer demand. Wait, how can planting trees be deforestation? Well, cacao trees are not native to the areas where the companies are planting them, so they cut down the existing trees to plant what they want. On a smaller scale, individual homes destroy habitat by installing lawns. Lawns offer no benefit to wildlife or pollinators, and they use lots of water to look aesthetic. Because they are not made of native plants, they are also not drought resistant and deplete nutrients in the soil. During the extraction of resources, we also negatively affect biodiversity. The most severe form of biodiversity loss is human-driven. Half of the Earth is inhabitable land converted to agriculture, 77% of which is used for grazing animals. Habitat loss due to urban and agricultural sprawl has transferred invasive species and caused climate change, which overall limits the nutrients and resources available to wildlife. The wildlife cannot cope with the environmental change in time, therefore depleting their populations despite our heavy reliance on some species for food and medicinal needs. We are not being conscious of our carbon footprint or working with the land. Instead, we wreck the land and proceed to pollute it during our manufacturing and distribution processes. And pollute we do. We are heedlessly releasing toxins, light, and noise into the air, water, and soil. Our air is currently a mix of microplastic particles and greenhouse gases from agriculture waste and the burning of fossil fuels. 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in water, and over 40% of it is severely polluted by agricultural runoff, lawn fertilizer, oil spills on roadways and in waterways, the release of untreated water, pharmaceuticals, plastics, and other garbage. The permeability of soil is also shrinking due to the massive quantities of industrial and commercial waste. The handling of materials or chemicals, pesticides, mining, and litter. While nature has built-in ways to deal with pollution, our pollution has far outpaced their filtering abilities. For example, oysters. They have pretty good filtering abilities, except for we have destroyed 80% of their population. You're welcome. In fact, it has far outpaced our own abilities to deal with it. The amount of waste we create is absolutely overwhelming the system. Clothing waste is one of the most disastrous. Americans discard 17 million tons of textiles each year, many of which are intentionally destroyed dead stock from retailers trying to uphold their reputation. Fast fashion garments often contain toxic materials that harm both humans and the environment, especially when they end up in landfills. Plastic production has surged despite how young of a material it is. It has only existed since the 1950s, and since then, humans have produced and consumed 9 billion tons. Many plastic items are wrongly labeled as single-use or disposable. Every piece of plastic ever made still exists. Microplastics are in everything by now, even our bodies. We consume a credit card's worth each week. Americans alone waste 40 million tons of food annually due to misunderstanding expiration dates, minimal meal or ingredient prep, and trashing leftovers. Billions of dollars are put towards coal and oil used to produce unnecessary electricity, and we dispose of nearly 54 million tons of electronic waste annually, even though they are the most taxing items to produce due to the reliance on rare mined materials. Our society has tried to create methods to contain and dispose all of our waste, but this has deemed itself quite difficult, as very few materials actually biodegrade. Landfills are the most widespread solution. They are areas where waste can be buried between layers of earth, sand, and clay. However, they are notoriously starved of the conditions to properly biodegrade, and instead rot together to release greenhouse gases like methane. Landfills contribute to about 20% of world's methane emissions. They also threaten wildlife through entanglement, starvation, and other injuries. I, along with a group of students, had the opportunity to visit the Outagamie County landfill to tour the recycling center. Our tour guide, Jordan, talked us through the sorting process, employee experiences, materials, waste numbers, and household disposal practices. I later wrote a reflection paper analyzing what I did or what I learned and my opinion on the ethics of the whole system. There he is. While we've been under deception to believe our waste magically is transported to a different universe, there are in fact hardworking people behind most of waste handling. Having said that, although pollution affects us worldwide, it does not affect us all equally. High-income countries produce 34% of world's waste, but make up only 16% of the world's population, United States included. We are especially good, however, at giving our problems to other, more under-resourced countries to deal with, as we carry the mindset of out of sight, out of mind. An example of the trash dumping, which is illegal in the US, or an example is trash dumping. Yet our unwanted textiles are shipped to South America, Africa, and Asia. Chile's Atacama Desert has so much clothing waste that it is visible from space. That's what that looks like. The process of pawning off our overconsumption on historically oppressed areas is just another form of colonialism. Now, I don't think any of us want to harm and pollute others, but until manufacturers take more responsibility for the extended and end life of their products, our possessions are our responsibility. It is up to us to begin the work, and solutions do exist. All right, take a deep breath. We can finally talk about hopeful things. Sustainability is hope. Remember that linear system we talked about? It's time to put an end to it. It's time to embrace a circular economy. Our lack of knowledge about the impacts of our actions blinds us to possibility, which sadly leads to apathy. In order to make change, we must become conscious of our actions and how they interact with the system, so that we have the power to defy it for the sake of Earth's longevity. Sustainability is defined as the ability to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It involves working together and planning ahead. We must do this in groups and as individuals. The United States nation, the United Nations Sustainability Goals for 2030 offer excellent guidelines. They address the main challenges to sustainability that we as a planet face: poverty, inequity, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. I encourage you all to look over them on your own time. Federal, state, and even local governments can take steps in the right direction by establishing and upholding regulations and policy that support sustainability. The City of Appleton, for example, is beginning the development of a community-wide sustainability and resilience master plan to enhance overall community sustainability, resilience to climate change, and work towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I recently filled out their survey that aims to gather input on perceptions, needs, opportunities, priorities, and issues in Appleton. I encourage you guys also to share your voice by taking the survey to inform their planning efforts. It might just help create a more walkable city, like Silhouette talked about, and continue to preserve the natural environment at Bubolz and Heckrod, like Dexter talked about. The first thing we need to do as individuals is work on our mindset. Our paradigm of overconsumption must shift to a psychology of less. We don't need material goods to define us. Comparison and competition do not serve our well-being or the well-being of our planet. This change will open our eyes to the abundance we already have. When we appreciate beautiful things, items with nostalgia, utility, items that help efficiency, we will be able to discern what is actually helpful. Then we can begin to pare down the stuff we currently have. Clearing out unnecessary possessions allows space to organize and care for what we keep. Science supports the idea that organizing our space leads to a healthier body, better sleep, enhanced cognitive function, and even fewer addictions. Several studies have shown that rearranging a room is as powerful as prescriptions for people with depression. To apply this to my own space, I decided to analyze my wardrobe. I began by documenting each item I owned and what category they fall under, specifically clothing, so tops, bottoms, outerwear, undergarments, one pieces, and accessories. Turns out I own 445 total items. These pie charts break down every category of my wardrobe. Can I take this off and talk quick? That's a bad idea. Okay. This one in specific has all of the categories, each little one too. So like vests, sweaters, PJs, shoes, jewelry, bags, whatever. If you can't see, socks and short sleeves make up have the biggest amount of my wardrobe. Let's see. What's the fun one? Oh yeah, tops also make up most of my overall wardrobe, and I have a lot more socks than I do underwear, which is kind of weird because you probably need that more, but I don't know. Okay, anyway. Meanwhile, over the span of 6 months or so, I tracked my outfits to identify what % of my wardrobe I actually wore. I only included clothing items for this one as well. Out of 260 garments I own, I wore 193, or 74%. These were some of my most worn pieces. So if you saw me wearing them around, that's probably why. To take it one step further, I counted up how many garments were new, secondhand, hand-me-downs, or gifts. If you want to try doing this for yourself, I suggest this video or those 2 videos for your own analysis. It was pretty fun. Additionally, I tracked every clothing item I purchased throughout the year. From what I recorded, I purchased 25 pieces with a total cost of $150. 22 of the garments were secondhand with the total cost of $117, averaging out to about $5 a piece. And 3 garments were new, totaling to $32, with an average of $10 per piece. Just goes to show that thrifting is pretty good for your finances. All this tracking gave me incredible insight into my consumption level, and it gave me the chance to reflect on what drives me to consume. Once we have cleared away excess and organized our space, we are ready to set new boundaries of voluntary simplicity based on our core values of personal growth, human good, and reducing consumption. This will include setting boundaries about how we spend our time and our money. Practicing frugality doesn't mean being stingy, miserly, or downright cheap. We simply have to be aware of what is necessary and choose the most sustainable option from its start life to its end life. In other words, buy the best of what we need and no more, and avoid waste. I put this to the test by comparing the cost and sustainability of commercial facial moisturizer, a sustainable moisturizer, and a homemade moisturizer. By identifying the pros and cons of each item, I could conclude which option would be the best in the long term. I interviewed my household, to see what products they used, then investigated the ingredients, sourcing, and the cost. I then compiled a list of sustainable moisturizers to document their benefits and affordability. Finally, I worked with my dad, who has a recipe and supplies for making a homemade moisturizer. And after a ton of math, we calculated the most sustainable option. Our homemade moisturizer costs $21.17 for 20.85 fluid ounces. That totals to about $1 per ounce. The sustainable moisturizer that we chose because it had the most similar ingredients to the homemade moisturizer that I made totaled to about $18 for 2 fluid ounces. And one of our household moisturizers, a Vino facial moisturizer, totaled roughly $25 for 4 fluid ounces. I concluded that although it may take time to create, the homemade version is the most sustainable in the long run, financially and for your skin. If you'd like to try some, I have it. It's for sale. It's in my backpack. Like hygiene, food is essential. However, grocery stores are filled with unnecessary options. It's up to us to discern which choices are sustainable. To apply my research, I went to grocery shopping with my mom and to both festival foods and the flea market. Using our shopping list, which is a great way to avoid impulse purchasing, by the way, we looked for products that were organic, minimally processed, locally sourced, and packaged in recyclable materials instead of plastic. I later wrote this analysis about my experience, and I found it very interesting how grocery stores are designed to encourage us to overconsume as well. And remember, too much focus on saving money can mean wasting another finite resource, time. Relieve yourself of extra expenses, but don't spend all your time scheming about how to save a few pennies. That would just be another way to succumb to the paradox of choice. Stay focused on the things that matter to you: family, hobbies, learning, charitable causes, and use your own creativity and resourcefulness rather than staying dependent on marketing suggestions. The best way to save money and practice sustainability is to utilize resale. Not buying new relieves the resources we used and pollution caused by production, extends utility of existing things, and lends valuable intel to retailers about the future we want by voting with our dollar. We currently have enough unused clothes to dress the next 6 generations, so you can count on finding a cool alternative at the thrift store. I had the privilege of interviewing the 2 owners of a vintage shop down in Neenah called Acre Vintage. They provided great insights into how they began in the resale industry, how they run their business now, and the future of resale, which seems to be selling on a live stream. So, our interview inspired me to explore other non-traditional and sustainable ways to begin your wardrobe, to build your wardrobe. One suggestion I received was a clothing swap. I reached out to a friend, Alona, who had run a clothing swap herself, to plan out my event. I created advertising material to spread the word, including social media posts and flyers that I printed. Asking to hang them up downtown in downtown businesses turned out to be a good opportunity to network with other owners who were also concerned about sustainability. Most of you attended the school clothing swap. Thank you very much for those who participated in it, by the way. I also held a swap open to the public the following weekend. It was a great experience. I met tons of new people, and there were a lot more clothes than I expected. It was exciting to raise awareness about sustainability and practice it at the same time. After the success of the clothing swap, I wanted to continue to connect with and encourage others to adopt sustainable practices. I hung up posters to assist with proper recycling, which is like around the school and downtown. I also created an Instagram profile specifically focusing on promoting sustainable clothing choices. I put together videos of my own thrifting trips to show the cool things I could find in thrift stores and give the stores a bit of free advertising, not that many people saw it anyway, hopefully to encourage others to shop there. I hope I can also encourage you to begin to adopt other practices of sustainability as well. I have only scratched the surface today during my presentation, but here are a few other actions you can prioritize in your life to transform our linear system into a circular one using the structure of the 7 R's. Rethink. This is the foundation I spent most of my time here today discussing how our mindsets and consumption need to change before we can really make progress towards sustainability. Reflect on what perspectives you might need to shift, become aware of the influences and in marketing and media you engage with, and notice your spending habits. Refuse, avoid unnecessary purchases, choose products with less packaging, prevent single-use plastics and other waste from entering your home. Reduce, purchase less. When you do buy, select quality products made sustainably so that they will last longer. Reuse and refurbish, use items multiple times, switch to reusable versions, and purchase resale. Repair, mend and fix broken items instead of trashing them. Repurpose and regift. Upcycle clothing and other items to give them a new life, or consider passing them as a gift to someone else. And finally, recycle/rot. Sort garbage into the correct bins. Try composting. I just started composting, and I'm excited to see how it reduces our trash and turns into useful fertilizer for plants around our house. And of course, continue learning. I'm happy to share my entire list of resources with any of you if you would like it. For now, here are just a few suggestions to dive deeper and stay organized. This over here is a picture of my Lucid chart. Lucid chart is connected to Google Drive. It was a very good visual tool. I used it as my project planner and research planner all together. Ecosia is a eco-friendly web browser, so basically Safari, but it helps the earth. The carbon footprint calculator I also took myself. It, I think, looks at your waste, fuel, and transport or emissions or something, and then it calculates how much emissions you emit. I really liked the 2 YouTube channels there, The Story of Stuff Project and Success Chasers. It was very informational, especially about psychology things or just waste in general. The Decision Lab had really good, more philosophical articles. I read the book No New Things, which is it's some millennial gal that's really good at marketing and stuff, and she explains all of the behind the schemes kind of, and then gives you a template where you don't buy new things for 30 days, whatever. So if you want to borrow that book, you can. And then I also listened to the audiobook To Have or To Be. It was very inspirational, a little hard to understand because it's very philosophical too. but it focuses on materialism versus being and being okay with that. All right. Feel free to look into these if you want to learn anything more about frugality, sustainability, and overconsumption. Next year, I will be continuing my education in the fall at Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, New York, to carry on my studies in dance and explore other fields. Finally, I'd like to give a big thanks to all of those who supported me and my project. Lindy and Krista, the owners of Acre Vintage, and Nina, they resell a selection of curated clothes and goods, and I highly encourage you to visit their shop. It was very, very beautiful. VNS alum Landon Brooks, a student at University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, studying conservation. Jordan Hiller, our tour guide at the Allegheny County Recycling Center. Kim Massey, Monica Austin, Quadri Smith, and Matt Hunter for graciously advertising my clothing swap. Their shops are listed next to their names and are all located downtown Appleton. I recommend you all check them out if you like secondhand or vintage, which you all should by now. Alona Havel, for helping me with my swap as well. She was the one who gave me insight on how to do it. VNS alum Tegan Hurley for being a massive inspiration to me and my project. To be honest, I don't know what I would have done without her work as a guide, sort of. Imogen Gillard, one of my fellow dancers, who turns out is the sustainability advisor for Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition, right there if you want to ask her questions. Obviously, the advisors who helped me more than I did, or believed in me more than I did myself most of the time, if not all the time. And same goes for my family, who all supported me in one way or another. Veronica cooking me dinner, helping me with my slideshow. My mother for religiously staying up until 2 a.m. with me last night. Whatever. I'm forever grateful. And finally, you all. I'm so happy I'm so happy I've gotten to interact with each of you at least once. You're all great. I really appreciate the participation in my events and for my project and all the kind words that I received throughout the year. It really, really, really kept me going. So thanks, and it makes me very hopeful for the future of Venus. My God, I just choked on my spit. Before I take questions, I want to leave you with one more final thought. Renowned environmental leader Robert Swan states, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Sustainability is not just a choice, it is a responsibility. Small acts, when multiplied by 8 billion people, can transform the economy, environment, and our future." Thank you. I'll take questions now. Pull your books. Okay, advice for future seniors. I was thinking about this. I thought it probably would have been helpful to have my project topic and preliminary research done before I started the year so I could utilize as much of the time you have to do the work. And, I happen to save all the most important things until the end of my project. So I'm not as proud of those, but I did a lot of hands-on work, which was nice. So I encourage you to just procrastination, whatever. Veronica.
Sewing clothes, sustainable and cheaper.
Sewing your own clothes?
Yeah.
I didn't test that. Or Veronica asked, Is sewing your own clothes more sustainable in the long run? Yeah, I didn't look into that specifically, but I feel like it can be a little bit more ethical depending on where you're getting your clothes from. I feel like supporting local businesses who are just sewing them themselves is also good, but I would assume that sewing your own is not only is really fun, but it also probably costs less. I don't know, Grandma, what'd you think?
Sometimes it's less.
Okay, it's less, that's what she said. All right, any other questions?
I was in 4-H once.
Oh yeah, 4-H. Lily? I was gonna bring it up here with me too. I used written notes for the first time since 7th grade. I wanted to make sure this year I comprehended what I was learning, especially because it was throughout the entire year. So writing's a great way to do that, and I would recommend it. Max?
So how many notes did you make if you wrote them?
Ooh, well, not to brag, but like maybe 700.
Oh my God.
Like, I don't know. I took a lot of notes on paper and then I transferred them and then I did more research as I found areas of, emptiness. I don't know. Thank you. Hardest part of the process. To be honest, it was writing the essay. Because I feel like I thrive more writing conversationally, as even if I'm like being informational. So having the essay, I'm very I have a lot of perfectionism. So when writing it, I am too worried about how a sentence fits in there, and it takes me a while. And yeah, the essay was definitely the hardest part. It did.
If you had more time, what would you add research-wise?
Research-wise. If I had more time, what would I add research-wise? I really did like the schemes of marketing and behind that, how they get us to think we need more. Also, just I did a lot of. I found out about a lot of individual practices, but I feel like in the future I could look more into larger scale how I can do my part. Yeah. Veronica?
Besides thrifting, what else or what other practices are you going to implement to keep it more sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, thrifting, I want to start composting. I kind of want to be the person that is homesteaded, but not full on homesteaded in the middle of nowhere, So make my own stuff, do a bunch of what's it called? What's it called? Where you put things in a jar and they just wait in a pantry. Fermenting, yes. Yeah. I'm sure there's other things, but yeah, I just want to live my life to the fullest and not let people or the systems take over, whatever. Yeah, okay, Lily. Now I'll leave that for him to do. Amish people seem kind of cool though, I think. Maple?
So you have a very dynamic project and I love experiences. How did you find those?
How did I find my experiences? I feel like it was because I started my research, and then as I went along, I was like, man, I kind of want to do that. So I just did it. Or I would talk to my live source, and then got the idea for another thing to do, the clothing swap. So I think it was just one thing led to another, and like everyone keeps saying, I took the opportunities. Miss Luki.
Do you feel hopeful about maybe that we've rebounded or turned any sort of corner or come back around to anything as far as sustainability goes in the big picture?
Have I?
I feel like we've.
I
turned
understand the
any
question. I
corners.
forgot how to reiterate it.
Yeah. Have we turned any corners? Yeah,
Yes. Have we turned any corners? Are we on like a path to be positive with sustainability? I mean, I don't know if it's just because my feed on Instagram is like getting more about sustainable things, but I feel like I'm seeing more people actually taking initiatives. I'm happy to hear that Appleton's doing their part. I'm not sure because I'm not trying to be political, but I'm not sure if because of our our people in office right now, it'll be easy to turn a corner at this time. I feel like we just need to focus less on greed overall, and that was another thing I was trying to just identify throughout the entire project whether it was the people who emitted the most pollution that need to do the change, or if it was us as individuals. And I found that it's kind of up to us even to inform the bigger emitters or whatever, bigger polluters. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know if we're quite on the upward slope. We're kind of losing time, but it takes a lot, and it's also a lot of money to become sustainable. But I hope everyone can just do what they can in time. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.